My daughter's husband thought he was being clever when he told the whole family that I was a useless old man taking up space in their lives. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. Then I went home and made one phone call that ended his medical career before it even started. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. Look, I need to tell you about the worst Thanksgiving dinner of my life, and trust me, I've had some bad ones. My name's Robert Chen, and I'm 67 years old, retired engineer, widower for 3 years now since my wife Linda passed. I've got one daughter, Michelle, who's 32 and works as a marketing manager downtown. Michelle married Brad 2 years ago. Brad's a medical student at University of Colorado. 4th year, almost ready to start his residency. Smart kid, I'll give him that. But smart doesn't mean decent. See, here's what Brad didn't know. For the past 6 years, I've been paying his medical school tuition. All of it. Plus his living expenses, books, everything. $650,000 total so far. Michelle thought he had some mysterious scholarship. Brad thought his loans were being handled by some anonymous foundation. Neither of them knew the money was coming from me. Why the secrecy? Because I wanted to see what kind of man my daughter was marrying when he didn't think he owed me anything. Turns out he was exactly the kind of man I was afraid he'd be. So there we were, Thanksgiving 2023. Michelle's house in Highlands Ranch. Beautiful place, by the way. I'd helped with the down payment, but that's another story. The whole family was there. My sister Rose and her husband, Michelle's cousin Kevin. Even Brad's parents flew in from California. Big happy family gathering. Everything started normal. Turkey looked great. Michelle always was a good cook, learned from her mother. We're all sitting around the table, passing dishes, making small talk. Then Brad starts drinking. Not unusual. The kid always drank too much at family events. But this time, he kept going. Robert, he says to me around the 3rd glass of wine, you know what your problem is? Red flag number 1. When someone starts a sentence like that, nothing good follows. What's my problem, Brad? You live in the past. All your stories are about the old days. Vietnam, building bridges, working with your hands. Nobody cares about that stuff anymore. Michelle looks uncomfortable. Brad, maybe we should. No, he waves her off. Someone needs to tell him. Robert, you don't understand the modern world. Technology, medicine, progress. You're stuck in some 1960s mindset. I'm cutting my turkey, staying calm. Is that right? It is right. And honestly, it's exhausting for Michelle, having to constantly manage your feelings, include you in everything, pretend like your outdated opinions matter. The table went quiet. Everyone's looking at their plates. Brad keeps going. I mean, let's be honest here. What do you actually contribute to this family? You tell the same war stories. You complain about everything new. You take up emotional space that Michelle could be using for her own life. Brad, Rose says quietly, maybe that's enough. Is it enough? Because I don't think we're being honest about the burden situation here. Burden, there's that word. What burden situation, I ask? Brad leans back in his chair, wine making him brave. The burden of having an elderly parent who won't admit he's not relevant anymore. Michelle spends half her time worrying about you, visiting you, making sure you're okay. It's holding her back. From what? From her potential. From our potential as a couple. From focusing on what actually matters. Which is our careers, our future. Building something meaningful instead of babysitting someone who's already lived his life. Michelle's crying now. Quietly, but crying. Brad, stop, she whispers. Why should I stop? Someone needs to say it. Robert, you're 67 years old. You're taking up space in your daughter's life that she could be using for people who actually have futures. The whole table's staring at him now. Even his own parents look mortified. People who actually have futures. I repeat. Exactly. Michelle's 32. I'm about to be a doctor. We have decades ahead of us. You've already had your decades. Maybe it's time to step back and let the next generation take over. Take over what? Everything. Family decisions, holiday planning, Michelle's attention and emotional energy, all of it. He takes another drink. Look, I'm not saying you should die or anything, but maybe consider that your role in this family has changed. Maybe accept that you're more of a legacy item now. Something we preserve and visit occasionally, but not something that drives current policy. Legacy item. Like I was furniture. Brad, his mother says, I think you've had enough wine. Have I? Because I think I'm finally being honest about something everyone's been thinking. He looks around the table. Come on, don't we all feel this way sometimes? That we're tiptoeing around Robert's feelings instead of just living our lives? Dead silence. Don't we all wish we could make plans without wondering how Robert will react? Have conversations without him correcting everything or explaining how things were different in his day? Kevin, Michelle's cousin, clears his throat. Brad, man, you should probably what? Stop telling the truth? Robert, you want to know what I really think? I'm listening. I think you're a worthless burden who should just disappear and let your daughter have a normal life without constantly managing your needs and emotions. Everyone gasped. Michelle started sobbing. Brad's dad reached across the table like he was going to hit his own son. But me? I started laughing. You think that's funny? Brad asks. I think it's educational, I said, standing up. Really educational. I walked around the table and kissed Michelle on the forehead. Honey, dinner was beautiful. Thank you for hosting. Dad, please don't leave because of... I'm not leaving because of Brad, I said. I'm leaving because I have a phone call to make. Brad smirking now. What kind of phone call? The kind that's going to change your life, son. I walked out of that house with everyone staring after me, got in my car, drove home, and sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and my phone. See, Brad was right about one thing. It was time for honesty. Time for him to learn exactly how worthless this burden really was. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was upset. Because I was planning. Friday morning, 8 a.m. sharp, I called my banker, Patricia Kim. I've done business with Patricia for 15 years. She knows me, trusts me, understands how I operate. Robert, she says, how was your Thanksgiving? Educational. Patricia, I need to discuss the Mitchell Foundation account. The Mitchell Foundation was something I'd set up 6 years ago. Anonymous charitable foundation, funded by me, administered through Patricia's bank. The foundation had been paying Brad's medical school expenses. To him, it looked like financial aid. To the school, it looked like a legitimate scholarship fund. Nobody knew the money was coming from me. What about it? I want to close it, today. Close it? Robert, that foundation has been supporting medical education for years. Don't you want to? I want to close it effective immediately. Cancel all future payments. Withdraw all remaining funds. Silence on the other end. Patricia, that's going to leave some students without funding mid-semester. One student. And yes, it will. Is there a problem with the foundation's mission? The problem is with the recipient. Turns out he's not the kind of person who deserves anonymous generosity. Patricia's been around long enough to know when not to ask questions. I'll need you to come in and sign the paperwork. And Robert? This will trigger immediate notification to the university. They'll contact the student about the funding gap. Good. How long until they reach out to him? Probably by noon. Perfect timing. Next call was to my lawyer, James Wright. James has handled my legal affairs since Linda died. Good man, understands complicated family situations. James, I need to discuss the Brad situation. What Brad situation? I explained the foundation, the medical school payments, everything Brad didn't know about his education funding. Robert, you've been paying this kid's medical school for 6 years without him knowing? That's right. Why the secrecy? Because I wanted to see what kind of man he really was before he felt obligated to be grateful. And? He's not a good man, James. I told him about Thanksgiving dinner, the worthless burden comment, the whole ugly scene. Jesus, Robert, what do you want to do? I want to make sure he understands exactly how much this worthless burden was worth to his future. You're cutting off his funding. Already done. But I want more. I want him to know it was me. I want him to understand that every single day of his medical education was paid for by the useless old man he disrespected. Robert, that's nuclear. You're talking about destroying his career. I'm talking about teaching him consequences. He made a choice to humiliate me in front of my family. Now he gets to live with the results. What if he can get other funding? Fourth-year medical student with no warning, 6 months before graduation? Good luck with that. James was quiet for a while. You're sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. Okay, I'll draft a letter explaining the funding source and your decision to terminate it. Should I send it to him or the school? Both. I want everyone to know exactly why this happened. By 10 a.m., I was at the bank signing paperwork. By 11 a.m., the Mitchell Foundation was officially dissolved. By noon, my phone was ringing. Michelle? Dad, what did you do? I made a phone call, like I said I would. Brad just got a call from his school. They're saying his scholarship's been canceled. Something about foundation funding being withdrawn. That's terrible news. Dad, this is serious. He owes $180,000 for this semester alone. If he can't pay, they won't let him graduate. Sounds like a Brad problem. It's a family problem. Dad, he's sorry about last night. He was drunk. He said things he didn't mean. Michelle, he meant every word. And now he gets to learn what life looks like without the worthless burden supporting him. Supporting him how? That's when I realized Michelle still didn't know. She had no idea I'd been funding Brad's entire education. Honey, sit down. We need to talk. I met Michelle at her house that afternoon. Brad was at school, frantically trying to figure out his funding situation. Perfect timing for a father-daughter conversation. Dad, I don't understand what's happening, Michelle said, making coffee in the kitchen I'd helped design. The Mitchell Foundation was mine, sweetheart. What do you mean, yours? I created it 6 years ago to pay Brad's medical school expenses. Anonymously, I've been funding his entire education. The coffee mug slipped from her hands, shattered on the floor. What? $650,000 so far. Tuition, books, living expenses, everything. Brad thought it was financial aid. You thought it was some scholarship. It was me. She sat down hard in one of the kitchen chairs. Dad, why didn't you tell us? Because I wanted to see what kind of man Brad was when he didn't think he owed me anything. And last night? Last night I found out. Michelle started crying again. Dad, he didn't know. If he'd known you were helping him, he would have been fake grateful instead of genuinely disrespectful. Which version would you prefer? That's not fair. Michelle, your husband called me a worthless burden who should disappear so you could have a normal life. In front of our entire family. How is holding him accountable for that unfair? Because he was drunk. Drunk words are sober thoughts, honey. Brad told me exactly what he thinks of me. Now I'm telling him exactly what I think of him. By destroying his career? By stopping my financial support for someone who treats me like garbage. Michelle was quiet for a long time, processing. Dad, what happens now? Now Brad learns to solve his own problems, like a real adult. He can't get $180,000 in 6 months. Then maybe he shouldn't have insulted the person who was secretly paying his bills. Dad, please, he's my husband. He's your husband who thinks I'm a worthless burden. Ask yourself why you married someone who talks about your father that way. That hit her hard. I could see it in her face. What if he apologizes? Michelle, this isn't about apologies. This is about character. Brad showed me his character last night. Now I'm showing him mine. By being vindictive? By being honest. For 6 years I've been dishonest. Paying his way while pretending not to. Letting him think he was self-sufficient while actually carrying him. Last night, he demanded honesty. So here it is. My phone buzzed. Text message from unknown number. Mr. Chen, this is Brad. Michelle gave me your number. We need to talk, please. I showed Michelle the text. Are you going to respond? Eventually. What will you tell him? That worthless burdens don't take phone calls from people who disrespect them. Michelle looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. Dad, this isn't like you. You're right. The me you know would have swallowed the insult, made excuses for Brad's behavior, and continued enabling his disrespect while funding his future. And this version? This version spent 3 years learning that life's too short to accept abuse from people who should be grateful. Since Mom died? Since Mom died, she always said I was too generous for my own good. Turns out she was right. Another text from Brad. Please, I'm begging you. I need to understand what's happening. He's begging now, I told Michelle. Doesn't that matter to you? It would matter if he was begging because he realized he was wrong. But he's begging because his money got cut off. There's a difference. Michelle started crying again. Dad, I don't know what to do. About what? About my marriage. About you. About this whole situation. What do you want to do? I want my husband to not be a jerk to my father. And I want my father to not destroy my husband's career. One of those things was possible before last night, now neither of them is. Because? Because Brad showed you exactly who he is. And I showed you exactly who I am. Now you get to decide which person you want in your life. That evening, Brad came home to find Michelle crying in the kitchen and me gone. According to Michelle later, he immediately started demanding answers. Where's your father? I need to talk to him. He's not taking your calls. This is insane, Michelle. Some foundation canceled my funding, and now your dad's acting like it's his fault. It is his fault, Brad. What do you mean? The foundation was his. Dad's been paying for your medical school for 6 years. Brad sat down so hard the chair creaked. That's impossible. $650,000, Brad. My father paid $650,000 for your education. Anonymously, you've been calling your benefactor a worthless burden. The silence that followed probably lasted about 5 minutes. Oh, God. Yeah, oh, God. By Saturday morning, Brad was in full panic mode. Michelle called to tell me he'd been up all night, calling every financial aid office, loan company, and scholarship fund he could find. Nobody can help him on this timeline, she said. Dad, he needs $180,000 by January 15th or they won't let him graduate. That's 6 weeks away. Plenty of time to figure something out. From where? His parents don't have that kind of money. Banks won't approve student loans that fast. There's no scholarship for fourth-year students. Sounds like Brad should have thought about that before he decided to lecture me about being worthless. Dad, please. He wants to apologize. I'm sure he does. Will you at least listen to him? I thought about it. Fine, but not at your house. Neutral territory. And Michelle, I want you there too. Why? Because you need to hear what he has to say. We met at Starbucks on Saturday afternoon. Brad looked terrible, hadn't slept, probably hadn't eaten. His whole future was crumbling, and he knew it. Mr. Chen, he said, I owe you an apology. For what, specifically? For what I said at dinner. I was drunk, I was stressed about school, I said things I didn't mean. Which things didn't you mean? Brad squirmed. All of it. The stuff about you being worthless, about taking up space. I was completely out of line. What about the part where you said I should disappear so Michelle could have a normal life? I didn't mean that either. What about calling me a burden? None of it. I was drunk and stupid. I leaned back in my chair. Brad, let me ask you something. If I hadn't been paying your medical school bills, would you still think those things were wrong to say? Of course. Really? Because it seems like your apology is motivated by finding out I was your benefactor, not by realizing you were disrespectful. That's not true. Isn't it? Brad, you've been treating me with subtle disrespect for 2 years. Rolling your eyes at my stories, correcting me in conversations, acting like I was some outdated relic you had to tolerate. I never. You did, constantly. The only difference is Thursday night you finally said it out loud. Brad looked at Michelle like she might help him. She was staring at her coffee. Mr. Chen, I understand you're upset, but destroying my career doesn't fix anything. I'm not destroying your career. I'm stopping my financial support for someone who treats me like garbage. Same thing. No, it's not. Destroying your career would be calling the medical board and telling them you cheated on exams. What I'm doing is simply not paying your bills anymore. But you know I can't pay them myself. That's a you problem. Mr. Chen, please. I'll do anything. I'll apologize publicly. I'll make it up to you, whatever you want. What I want is for the last 6 years to have gone differently. What I want is to have raised a daughter who married someone who respects her family. What I want is to not have wasted $650,000 on an ungrateful brat. Don't call him a brat, Michelle said quietly. Why not? He acted like one. Dad, he's apologizing. He's apologizing because his money got cut off. If the foundation was still paying his bills, do you think we'd be having this conversation? Michelle couldn't answer that. Brad, I said, let me make something clear. This isn't about punishment. This is about consequences. You made a choice to disrespect me in front of my family. Now you get to live with the results. But the results destroy my entire future. Should have thought about that before you decided to humiliate me. I was drunk. So what? Drunk drivers are still responsible for accidents. Drunk people are still responsible for their words. Brad started crying, actual tears. Mr. Chen, I'm begging you, please don't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm doing something for me. I'm choosing not to financially support someone who thinks I'm worthless. I don't think you're worthless. You said I was a worthless burden who should disappear. I was wrong. Yes, you were. And now you get to learn exactly how wrong. I stood up to leave. Mr. Chen, wait! For what? Tell me what I can do. Tell me how to fix this. I looked at him sitting there, desperate and panicking, finally understanding the scope of his mistake. Brad, there's nothing you can do. 6 years ago, I made a choice to invest in your future because I thought you might become family. Thursday night, you made a choice to tell me exactly what you think of me. Now I'm making a choice based on that information. People make mistakes. Yes, they do, and mistakes have consequences. This consequence destroys my life. Maybe it does. Maybe that'll teach you to think before you speak. I walked out of that Starbucks, leaving Brad crying into his coffee and Michelle staring at the table. By Sunday, word was getting around the family about what had happened. Rose called me that evening. Robert, people are saying you cut off Brad's school funding. People are saying correctly. Because of what he said at dinner? Because of what he's been thinking for 2 years and finally said out loud. He was drunk, Robert. So I keep hearing, does being drunk excuse everything now? He's apologized. He's apologized for getting caught, not for meaning what he said. You're destroying a young man's future. I'm stopping my financial support for someone who called me worthless. How is that wrong? Rose was quiet for a minute. What would Linda say about this? That hit me harder than I expected. Linda had always been the peacemaker in our family, the one who smoothed over conflicts and found compromises. Linda would say that respect has to be earned and maintained, and that people who bite the hand that feeds them shouldn't be surprised when the feeding stops. She'd also say forgiveness matters. She'd be right. But forgiveness doesn't mean ignoring consequences. Robert, please, think about Michelle. This is destroying her marriage. Michelle's marriage was already destroyed. She just didn't know it yet. That was harsh, but it was true. Any marriage where one spouse thinks the other's parent is worthless and should disappear, that marriage has problems that go way deeper than medical school funding. The next week was brutal for everyone. Brad spent his days frantically calling potential lenders, family members, anyone who might have $180,000 lying around. Michelle spent her days crying and trying to figure out how to save her marriage. Me? I spent my days feeling something I hadn't felt in years: peace. For 6 years, I'd been secretly funding someone's future while he treated me like an inconvenience. For 2 years, I'd watched him dismiss my stories, correct my opinions, and generally act like I was some outdated piece of furniture Michelle was stuck with. Now, finally, the relationship was honest. He didn't respect me, and I wasn't paying his bills. Simple. Wednesday, Michelle came to my house. Dad, we need to talk. About what? About the fact that you're destroying my marriage. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not funding it anymore. Same thing. Michelle, let me ask you something. If Brad respected me, if he treated me well, if he valued my presence in your life, would we be having this conversation? No. Then the problem isn't my reaction. The problem is his behavior. But Dad, marriage is about compromise, about forgiveness. You're right. Has Brad compromised? Has he shown any sign that he understands what he did wrong beyond getting his money cut off? Michelle couldn't answer that. Honey, I need you to understand something. For 6 years, I've been lying to both of you, pretending I wasn't supporting Brad while secretly paying his way. That was wrong of me. Why did you do it? Because I wanted to see who he really was before he felt obligated to be grateful, and Thursday night I found out. He's not a bad person, Dad. Isn't he? Michelle, your husband thinks your father is worthless and should disappear so you can have a better life. What does that tell you about his character? that he was drunk and stupid. No, honey, that he was honest for the first time in your relationship. Michelle started crying again. So what happens now? Now you decide what kind of marriage you want. One where your husband respects your family, or one where he tolerates us as long as the money keeps flowing. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, sweetheart. But it is honest. Finally. Thursday morning, Brad called me directly. Not a text this time. An actual phone call. Mr. Chen, I know you don't want to talk to me, but please, just give me 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I stayed on the line. Talk. I've been thinking about what you said, about consequences and character, and you're right. About what? About me not respecting you. You're right. I didn't. That was more honesty than I'd expected. Go on. I thought I was smarter than you because I was younger and educated and heading into medicine. I thought your stories were boring and your opinions were outdated. And now? Now I realize that the person I thought was outdated and irrelevant was secretly funding my entire future, which makes me the idiot. Yes, it does. Mr. Chen, I can't undo what I said. I can't take back the disrespect, but I can promise you it'll never happen again. Because you learned your lesson, or because you found out I was paying your bills? Long pause. Honestly, both. I appreciated the honesty. Brad, let me ask you something. If I put the funding back, how do I know you won't go back to treating me like an inconvenience? Because I finally understand what you've sacrificed for my future, and because I finally understand that wisdom and experience matter more than youth and education. Do they? You built a successful engineering career, raised an amazing daughter, and somehow saw through my bullshit well enough to test me for 6 years without me knowing. That's not outdated, that's brilliant. He was saying the right things, but was he meaning them? Brad, I need you to understand something. This isn't about money anymore. This is about respect. If I restore your funding, it's not because you apologized. It's because I believe you've genuinely learned something. I have learned something. What? That humility matters, that gratitude matters, that treating people well isn't conditional on what they can do for you. And that I married into a family with an incredible man who I completely failed to appreciate. That got to me, not gonna lie. Brad, if I restore the funding, things change between us. No more eye-rolling, no more corrections, no more acting like I'm a burden on Michelle's life. Agreed. And you start treating me like family instead of like an obligation. Yes, sir. And if you ever disrespect me again in front of my family, the money stops permanently. No second chances. Understood. I thought about it for a long time. Was this kid genuine, or was he just desperate? Brad, I'm going to do something that might be stupid. What? I'm going to give you one more chance. But not because you apologized. Because Michelle loves you, and I love Michelle. Mr. Chen, thank you, I swear to you. Don't swear anything, just show me through your actions. I will. The funding resumes Monday. You graduate in May. After that, you're on your own financially. That's fair. And Brad? Yes, sir. If you ever call me worthless again, you'll learn exactly how much this worthless man can destroy your life. I restored Brad's funding that week, but I wasn't done testing him. 6 years of anonymous generosity had taught me that people show their true character when they think nobody's watching. Over the next few months, I paid attention. Really paid attention. Christmas 2023 was the first test. Brad gave me a thoughtful gift. A book about bridge engineering with a personal note about respecting my expertise. Small gesture, but meaningful. He started asking about my work stories. Not because he had to, but because he seemed genuinely interested. Asked intelligent questions. Showed real curiosity about construction and engineering. When I had a minor medical procedure in February, Brad called every day to check on me. Offered to drive me to appointments. Michelle hadn't asked him to do any of that. March brought the biggest test, Michelle's birthday party at their house. Brad's medical school friends were there. Young, educated, accomplished people who could have easily joined him in dismissing the old engineer. Instead, Brad introduced me as Michelle's father, Robert. He's the guy who taught me everything I know about problem solving. He told stories about things I'd shared with him, made me part of conversations instead of excluding me. Treated me like someone worth knowing instead of someone to tolerate. Was it performative? Maybe. But if someone's going to perform respect and gratitude for months on end, at some point it stops being performance and starts being habit. The real test came in April. Brad's graduation was approaching, and he was stressed about residency applications, competitive field, lots of politics, uncertain outcomes. He came to me for advice. Not money, not connections. Advice. Mr. Chen, how do you handle situations where the outcome is completely out of your control? You focus on what you can control and accept what you can't. What if what you can control isn't enough? Then you learn something about yourself and try again. We talked for 2 hours that night about failure, resilience, dealing with disappointment, the kind of conversation I'd wanted to have with him for years. Mr. Chen, can I ask you something personal? Shoot. When you were testing me all those years, did you expect me to fail? I thought about that. Honestly, I hoped you'd pass, but I prepared for you to fail. What would have happened if I'd never said those things at Thanksgiving? You probably would have graduated without ever knowing I paid your way. And then? And then you would have started your career thinking you'd earned everything yourself, and I would have known I'd raised a son-in-law who could stand on his own. But I didn't earn it myself. No, you didn't, but now you know that, which makes you a different person than you would have been. Better or worse? Better. Humility is a gift, Brad, even when it comes wrapped in consequences. May 15th, 2024. Brad's graduation from medical school. The whole family was there, including his parents from California. During his speech to family and friends, Brad said something that surprised everyone. I want to thank my father-in-law, Robert Chen, who taught me that education isn't just about what you learn in classrooms. It's about what you learn from people who've lived longer and seen more. He looked directly at me. Robert, you showed me that wisdom and generosity often come quietly, and that respect is something you earn through character, not credentials. After the ceremony, Brad's father pulled me aside. Robert, I owe you an apology. For what? For raising a son who thought he could disrespect you, and for not teaching him gratitude earlier. He learned it eventually. Thanks to you. Most people would have written him off after what he said. Most people don't have daughters who love stubborn medical students. Brad started his residency in pediatrics at Children's Hospital Colorado that July. He calls me every Sunday now, not because he has to, but because we've become friends. Real friends. The kind I always hoped we'd be. Michelle's marriage is stronger now, too. Having a husband who respects her father instead of resenting him has changed everything about their relationship. Dad, she told me recently, I never realized how much Brad's attitude toward you was affecting us. How so? I was always stressed about family gatherings. Always worried about tension between you two. Always trying to manage everyone's feelings. And now? Now I can just enjoy having my family together. Last month, Brad and Michelle told me they're expecting their first child. My first grandchild. We want to name him Robert, Brad said, if that's okay with you. You don't have to do that. We want to. You taught me what it means to be a father. Someone who provides not just money, but guidance. Someone who loves unconditionally, but expects respect in return. And if he's a she? Then Linda, after your wife. Either way, we want our child to carry the name of someone who showed us what family really means. I won't lie, that got me emotional. Last month was Thanksgiving 2024, 1 year since the dinner that changed everything. We gathered at Michelle and Brad's house again, same tables, same family, completely different energy. Brad cooked the turkey this year, did a good job too, asked me for advice on seasoning, timing, temperature. Treated my suggestions like valuable information instead of outdated opinions. During dinner, little Robert, 8 months old now, started fussing. Brad picked him up and said, "Hey buddy, want to meet the man you're named after?" He handed me my grandson and said to the table, "Everyone, I want to make a toast to Robert Chen, the man who taught me that education isn't complete until you learn humility." Last year at this table, I said some things I'll regret for the rest of my life. I called this man worthless. I said he should disappear. I was wrong about everything. Robert, you could have written me off. You could have let me fail and never looked back. Instead, you taught me consequences, then gave me a second chance to prove I'd learned from them. Today, I'm a doctor because of your generosity, but more importantly, I'm a better man because of your wisdom. He raised his glass. To Robert Chen, who proved that sometimes the best gift you can give someone is showing them what they're about to lose. Everyone drank to that. Even Brad's parents, who'd flown in from California again. After dinner, Brad and I went for a walk around the neighborhood. Crisp November air, leaves crunching under our feet. "Mr. Chen, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever regret giving me a second chance?" I thought about that question. "Brad, I don't regret the second chance. But I'll never regret the first consequence." "What do you mean?" "You needed to lose everything to understand what you had. If I just accepted your apology and restored the funding immediately, you would have learned that disrespect has no real price. Instead, you learned that actions have consequences, that respect must be earned, and that family means treating each other with dignity. Those are expensive lessons. The most valuable lessons usually are." We walked in comfortable silence for a while. "Mr. Chen, I have a confession." "What's that?" "Sometimes I'm grateful for what happened last year." "Why?" "Because it forced me to become the man Michelle deserved to marry, the man you deserved as a son-in-law, the man I want to be for little Robert." "And what kind of man is that?" "Someone who understands that wisdom doesn't expire at 65. That experience matters more than education. That treating people well isn't conditional on what they can do for you. Those are good principles to live by. I learned them from a worthless burden who turned out to be the most valuable man I know." I laughed. "You're never going to let me forget that phrase, are you?" "Never. It reminds me never to judge someone's worth by their age or circumstances." "Good, because little Robert is going to need that lesson someday." "What do you mean?" "Someday, Brad, you'll be the elderly father-in-law, and some young person will decide whether you're worth respecting or just tolerating. And if you've taught your son what I taught you, he'll make sure that young person understands the difference." We got back to the house as the sun was setting. Through the windows, we could see Michelle and her cousin playing with baby Robert. 3 generations of our family, comfortable together, respectful of each other. "Mr. Chen, thank you." "For what this time?" "For proving that family isn't just about blood or marriage certificates. It's about choosing to value each other, especially when it's hard." "You're welcome." "But Brad?" "Yes, sir?" "The real thanks come when you pass these lessons along to your son." "I will, I promise." That night, driving home to my quiet house, I thought about Linda and what she would say about everything that had happened. She'd probably tell me I was too stubborn for my own good. But she'd also say that sometimes stubborn is exactly what ungrateful people need to learn respect. Brad calls me every Sunday now. We talk about his work, his family, his dreams for little Robert's future. He asks for advice, shares his concerns, includes me in decisions. Not because he owes me money, but because he's learned to value what I have to offer. That's the difference between funding someone's life and earning their respect. One can be withdrawn at any time. The other has to be built, maintained, and treasured. Justice has many faces. Sometimes it looks like revenge, swift and satisfying. Sometimes it appears as consequences, cold and calculating. But sometimes justice looks like education, teaching someone what they're about to lose before they lose it permanently. My son-in-law called me a worthless burden who should disappear. He was wrong about worthless, wrong about being a burden, and wrong about disappearing. But he was right about one thing: honesty. For 6 years I'd been dishonest about supporting him. His cruel words gave me permission to be honest about stopping. The most expensive education anyone can receive is learning what respect costs when you refuse to pay it. Brad learned that lesson for $650,000. But he also learned what family really means, what gratitude looks like, and why wisdom should be cherished instead of dismissed. Sometimes the best gift you can give an ungrateful person is showing them exactly what they're about to lose. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they learn the lesson before it's too late to matter. The Linda Chen Foundation continues supporting medical students who understand that respect flows both directions. Because the last thing the world needs is more doctors who think age makes people worthless. My grandson Robert will grow up in a house where elderly wisdom is valued, where respect is expected, and where family means treating each other with dignity, regardless of circumstances. That's the real legacy, not the money spent on education, but the lessons learned about character. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to Justice Chronicles, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Where truth prevails, justice always finds its way.